Uh, Black Desert Online. Alright. Why am I even doing this? Honestly, there's a lot of reasons. BDO has been a huge stepping stone in experience, not only in a game sense, but as a whole. One thing you'll quickly realize is, even if you've only played like 100 hours, whenever you feel accomplished or that you've hit your goal, you got powerful, there's always going to be a crackhead that has just spent more time, more money, and can just one-shot your whole family. At least in my experience, it kind of had me feeling like it was me against the world, against all odds, lone wolf, whatever you want to call it. Independence is a double-edged sword though, and it taught me to only really rely on myself and the knowledge that I've gained over time. Like, man, if you can pull through thousands of hours in this game, through the endless grinding and soul-crushing enhancement attempts, then you can bench, bro. This is really the powerlifting of MMOs. In all seriousness though, I remember first seeing this game on Steam, and I just absolutely loved the graphics and the visuals in that trailer. But at the time, I've never seen like such a graphically intense MMO with pretty much infinite customization possibilities. So, on June 23rd, 2017, I started my adventure. At the time of playing, there were only 14 classes available, which was still a lot, don't get me wrong. But the ones that stood out to me were Sorceress, Valkyrie, and Dark Knight. I've always kind of liked mages, casters, and things like that, but for whatever reason, I decided to try and switch it up just a little bit by making a Valkyrie, and man, did I swap fast. The thing about BDO, though, is you can make multiple characters. In fact, it's actually encouraged to do so. For example, there's a mechanic where once you kill enough enemies, you start getting knowledge about them up to a max rank of S. And the higher knowledge rank you have on a type of enemy, the easier it is to slay them. And it even increases the loot and drop chance at S rank. Anyway, I never really felt truly comfortable with Valkyrie, but Dark Knight's mix of melee and magical attacks really got me interested. So I tried her out, and as you do, I immediately fell in love with the class. She was the cover girl, the face of BDO. But more importantly, the combat was just so extremely fulfilling and smooth. Around this time, I think I just finished Nier Automata, which is still my favorite game of all time. But the combat was actually quite similar in a good way. It almost feels like a fighting game where you need to learn your combos, true combos and escapes and things like that, but just like any MMO with half decent PvP, you need to eat, sleep, and breathe your class. But in BDO, there was a degree of mastery that was completely unmatched to anything I've ever seen or played at the time. And that's one of the features that locked me into playing for years and years to come. What really intrigued me though was the node system. So, around the world of BDO, there are cities, towns, and various named locations. But in those locations, you'll find these nodes, which you can invest in, right? Investing in a node allows you to collect resources from there as long as you have a worker. And you can also connect nodes between one another, as well as cities, so you can reduce the cost of transporting items stored at the respective city. But to invest in a node, you need CPU, or better known as contribution points. You can acquire these contribution points through quests and other various ways. Once you have some contribution points, you can then start investing in the nodes and housing for your workers. I mean, you can also buy yourself a house to live in, put furniture in. Oh, and don't worry, if you don't like the house or you want to change nodes, you can always get those points back and reinvest it somewhere else. But essentially, you can have your own empire and amass a huge amount of resources to do whatever your heart desires. But what is an MMO without collecting, crafting, skills like alchemy, cooking, even horse training? There's so many skills to master, and there's so much time to spend. And a lot of money to be spent. But for me personally, I dabbled in the gathering and cooking side of things. I had quite a bit of resources in storage from nodes and gathering periodically, but selling those raw materials can be mediocre. Not as much as what you'd make, producing the full product yourself. I did so much research on cooking and gathering. Like, I spent days learning the gathering routes for each material that I needed, spamming pickled vegetables, vinegar, oatmeal, King of Jungle Hamburg, and countless other recipes, just to then box them up and turn them in for cold hard cash, which would then buy me better gear to gather, cook, and feed the insatiable hunger of the Black Spirit. When it comes to enhancing, of course. At this point though, I was just too deep to turn around. I've devoted my blood, sweat, tears, and life to this game. Entirely. I would show up to every world boss, eventually running into your typical assholes. One day, I was leaving Kuranda, and I noticed my horse was losing HP very fast. So I quickly run over, and I see this Dark Knight chopping up my horse like a freshly caught piece of fish. So obviously, I quickly turn on PvP, I flag up, and I start defending what is now the remains of my horse. But keep in mind, I'm like nowhere near strong enough to kill this guy or even do enough damage. So I'm literally tickling his nutsack, right, with the gear that I have. Like, it's unmatched. And he clearly notices that I'm relatively new and I can't, even make a scratch. So he just stands there. He just completely stands there like a crazy, overpowered anime supervillain, just tanking every attack that I throw at him. And you know what he says to me? He says that I'm executing my combo wrong. So I'm furious. I'm super upset. I start slashing even harder and faster than ever before, like with fire and rage in my soul. I just throw out the last bit I have at him, But no matter how much I tried, he would eventually just regen all the damage that I did. So I kind of just stopped and I stood there because, what can I do, right? I'm completely powerless. Although I'm very much fueled with rage and the urge to seek revenge for my horse. But then he started to actually teach me the correct combo. And we actually sat there for minutes and minutes, on end. After everyone already, left the world boss. So him and I sat there rehearsing the combo until I got it right. And I was extremely confused as to why someone would spend the time to teach a PvP combo to someone that was literally just, lashing at their throat 2 minutes ago. But man, am I so very grateful that he did. So eventually, he apologized for killing the horse, and I apologized for running and slashing at him like a rabies-ridden squirrel. But we actually became friends on Discord, so he could sort of help me out a little bit more. Teach me how to play my class, and give me some general info about the game. But yeah, so thank you, Delinquent HD, or as a couple of us would say, Sweaty HD. But it was an interesting experience, to be completely honest. Because most of the time, PKers would just kind of mess around with you, slaughter you until one of your EPs ran out. But this time it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because from that point on, I've only ever used that combo, and practicing PvP was actually a lot of fun. The only issue though was my gear was absolutely nowhere near everyone else's. So eventually I set out to hoard enough money and materials to enhance my gear. For those who are unfamiliar, right? Enhancing is quite literally the most aggravating mechanic in the game. The system kind of goes as follows, right? You have a piece of gear, and you can use these things called blackstones to attempt to level up the gear. The first 5 levels are guaranteed, so it's just about getting enough blackstones. But there are a total of 20 levels. For each level after that, there's a chance to fail. And each time you fail, you get something called a fail stack. Depending on how many you have, it'll increase your chance of succeeding. For example, if you have a 50% chance to succeed, but you fail, it'll bump it up to 60. And then you fail again, it'll increase it to 65, and so on. These are just arbitrary numbers, by the way. But no matter what, if you succeed or fail, it'll still eat up your blackstones. Now, it doesn't seem all that bad, right? Because all you have to do is just keep trying. Well, once you succeed, it consumes all your fail stacks. So for another example, let's say you're at plus 14 and you have 22 fail stacks. That is an 8% chance to succeed. And if you do, then you get plus 15. And all 22 fail stacks in a row are now consumed. But I think you can sort of see where the frustration lies. But just when you thought it's over, it actually gets way worse. Because once you get to plus 15, it goes into a whole subset of levels. Pry, Duo, Try, Tet, and Pen, which is the max. The difference between these levels and the other levels is the chance gets exponentially worse. And if you fail, you get bumped down a tier. So let's say you're at Try with 44 fail stacks. That would equate to 33.75% to succeed. But if you fail, you get your gear demoted to Duo. Although you get plus 1 fail stack, right? But this is the fundamental of getting better gear score and just becoming stronger overall. But at what cost, right? Sanity, depression, mortgaging, or even worse, ERPing. If it wasn't already apparent, this game was developed by Prelibis, which is a Korean company. And if you know anything about Korean MMOs, you'd know that they can be the biggest grind fest you've ever seen, accompanied by an outrageous pay-to-win gambling system. It's pretty tough. Now, we aren't going to ignore the elephant in the room. You can totally pay to win in this game, and there are countless microtransactions to sort of aid you on your journey and make things more convenient. For example, there are these things called cronstones. If you have enough of them, you can use them to protect your gear. So if you were to fail the enhancement, you wouldn't drop down a tier. Although you don't get any fail stacks for failing a protected attempt. You can acquire these cronstones by extracting them from cosmetic outfits, and if you really wanted to, you can buy those outfit boxes and sell them on the marketplace to just acquire straight up money. There are also pets that you can buy, and these pets allow you to auto pick up loot drops from enemies, and the more pets that you have and the higher tier they are, the faster they are. Some pets even have special abilities, like the penguin, that reduces the time it takes to autofish, or the hedgehog that increases the items gained from gathering. There's also tents that you can buy that have buffs, potions, just a little bit of storage, and even a repair station. Last but not least, you can also buy value packs, blessings, and other bonuses that'll give you extra storage space, inventory space, bonus XP, and much more. It's kind of like a subscription system, but it's not necessary, even though I can't survive without having one. No matter how many pay-to-win systems there are, it still never really drove me away from the game though. To me, the grind and the satisfaction of getting better gear after hours and hours of massacring the same enemies and making bank after cooking the finest meals known to man, it was all enough to keep me entertained and coming back every single day. I learned the ins and outs of every single system, and to be completely honest, it was well worth it. I enjoyed those sleepless nights grinding the infinite potion pieces while watching Asmongold just mauled over World of Warcraft. The week I convinced my friends to download and play the game with me, teaching them everything I knew, killing world bosses together, and eventually enhancing a Penzarka on call, screaming my lungs out. Even winning the BDO 2020 calendar contest, finding all sorts of cool little spots to take screenshots, consulting my ex about which photos to submit for the contest, leaving my computer on for 2 months straight during a fishing event, making billions of silver in the process, and many more memories. In my mind, it was almost the perfect MMO for me. But where did it all go wrong? See, I had the strongest weapon I could have imagined. I had the fastest non-Dream Horse, ready to be turned into a Doom Horse. Don't judge me, I wanted a Doom Horse because I had fire, okay? It was cool. And I made outfits specifically just for processing resources from inside of my storage. I also had all the pets I could ask for. I had a miniature elephant named Donald Trunk that I could ride while he stomped around. Billions of silver just kind of sitting in the marketplace, I kind of had it all. Everything I worked for, countless months of grinding, every event, all day, every day. But the one thing I lacked was friends to share everything with. Don't get me wrong. Every once in a while, I would have those moments where I would get to play with a buddy of mine, like that one week with all my friends, or when I got my friend Gunnar to try the game, helping him out and just showing him the ropes, or getting one of my old friends from elementary school, Michael, to get the game and invite him to my guild even. But it was never really a consistent thing. It would always kind of be a one-off or bi-yearly experience, and to be fair, it does make sense. Even I like to play lots of different games all the time, and I don't think I've ever stayed consistent in a game for that long and that much. But something about the loneliness caught up to me, and it made me question whether or not I was really still enjoying the game, even after acquiring most of the things I sought out to get in the first place. It kind of was an endless race to get to the top, and the higher you get, the less progress you make, until they eventually release new content to boost everyone up to where you were back then. Which highlights the other problem with the game. There is really no end. There isn't a worthwhile reward for spending those 10 hours every day. Like, sure, the combat is fulfilling. The feeling you get after reaching your 100th goal is pretty great. But after grinding all those hours, what's next? More grind? It's an endless cycle, really. Take this with a grain of salt, because I haven't done the co-op dungeon since it wasn't released when I used to play. But I just don't feel like there was any genuinely fun and enjoyable content that seemed to reward me in any way, especially after spending that time doing it. It's all obviously subjective, and what you might consider a reward might be a slap in the face for me or others. Like how WoW enjoyers will spend months trying to farm a specific amount, or Final Fantasy XIV enjoyers leveling up a new job because they saw a glamour set that they want to wear. These achievements are purely personal, but compared to BDO's achievements, it all ultimately boils down to a single thing: gear. The endless grind philosophy is very apparent in Korean MMOs. Over there, it's some of the most enjoyable things to do, while over here, it's more so looked down upon. Doing tedious chores, claiming it to be content, is disheartening for most. I think that's one of the bigger flaws, because just like MapleStory, Lost Ark, and other overseas MMOs, they prioritize their local audience first, because they know their market. They understand what works, what players enjoy, how to monetize, etc. Which is exactly why there are sometimes giant gaps in release timing. You have to translate, organize, research, and develop for these outside regions. And it's a lot of work too. Publishers are there to localize said content and make sure it's all coherent for us. But the unfortunate part is the systems and mechanics that we don't enjoy, the things scaring new players and even veterans away, are baked into the game. It is fundamentally how the game works and how it's played. Yeah, it sucks, and there are always going to be things you don't like about anything and everything. But do the pros outweigh the cons for you? Does it really bother you that much? That's kind of for us to decide. And I believe a lot of us have. The extremely obvious monetization method allowing pay-to-win to thrive, the tedious and monotonous tasks veiled as content, the tiny ledges and rocks you can't jump over with your horse, and lack of meaningful achievements and rewards that players want, the endless cycle of grinding, and the nightmare of balance issues has deterred many away from enjoying the game. The community was a whole nother story. Like, you could not go 2 minutes in world chat without hearing about 3 things: Alienware, traps, or politics. And I'm pretty sure collectively everyone in world chat had 3 brain cells. Also, I'm not entirely sure if I just had been unlucky with how many PK experiences or egotistical assholes I've run into, but I've decided I should be wary of everyone outside of a city. Whether it's having someone interrupt your grinding rotation, gathering the same nodes as you, or just straight up flagging you up and killing you on sight. In fact, I was working on a BDO death note, so eventually when I become stronger, I would have a list of names to KOS as revenge. I think it's super silly and funny now, but I was completely serious. So, fuck you if your username is in here, you have wronged me and now everyone knows it. It even got so bad to the point where I actually set out to be the most hated player in BDO. There were so many ways I could have pulled it off too. I figured if most of the people that I came across were trying to sabotage the gameplay and experience, then I would just try to make myself known to the player base as someone to not mess with, unless you want to be farmed yourself. Eventually I did become strong enough to at least defend myself, if someone was threatening. But it was becoming tiresome grinding blood wolves for hundreds of hours with no potion piece to show for it. Although I do have something else to show for it, even though it's a little cringe.
수배때가 마블러시 남의 딱야 남의 도개 가왈리니 갤러 하크 I have to go and bam bam let's go 누구해 who's gone 누구해 갔다 맞다 호에텔로 motherfucker 아이 때니 데키 나이
I found that my patience was slipping, and I really needed something to catapult me back into playing the game. Nothing really ever ended up clicking though, as the same sort of issue persisted. I've always dreamt about creating a guild, having all my buddies in it, playing every day, hanging out at world bosses together, looking completely badass, maybe even going to war someday, as I help them build their gear score and showing them all the best combos for PvP, like ZenkoEXE did for me back then. Eventually, the ticking time bomb burst though, and I decided to pull the trigger on Final Fantasy XIV, which kind of was the best decision I ever made, to be honest. And maybe I'll go more in depth on that in a future video if you'd like me to. So, in retrospect, I'm very glad of the memories that I made in this game. You know, it's taught me a lot, and all those 4,000 hours were well spent, I would say. I may have not been the greatest at the time, but the grind sure made me feel that way. And don't let this video fool you, because you may actually enjoy it way more than I did. So even if you have the slightest inclination to try it, then just go for it. Sure, there's going to be some whales here and there, and yeah, you'll probably get PK'd while leveling your horse across Heidel and Valia, but don't let anyone stop you from achieving your goals. Get stronger for you. You're very cute, Ari, and I love you. Yeah, go lay down, okay? Yeah. Hi, buddy. Now be quiet, because I'm recording.